Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Leah.
I'm Mike.
And today we're going to start to look at our News Digest article, Unit 6, that is, Portugal's Open Immigration Policies. It is September 10th, and we are taking a look at, well, what's going on in Portugal these days.
That's right. Immigration is probably one of the biggest political issues, not just in Portugal, but all across Europe. Recently, we've seen European elections, and a lot of voters decided to back some of the more right-wing or conservative parties who are kind of against immigration. And of course, if we go back to, 2016 and the Brexit vote in the UK, immigration, of course, was one of the big reasons that people decided to leave the European Union. British voters, or a small majority of them, thought that the government in Britain had lost control of its borders, as they would say, and too many immigrants were coming in. Well, since Brexit was announced in 2016, there has been an increase in immigration to the UK, so they haven't really managed to bring their borders under control. But from Britain to France to Germany, and now it seems in Portugal as well, immigration is a real, what would we call this, a hot button issue.
A hot topic,
a
right?
Hot topic, a kind of controversial issue, the kind of thing that gets voters in a country very emotional, and it often leads to disagreements and possibly even arguments between people within a country about what is the best policy for immigration.
Interestingly, with Portugal, it seems like it's going the opposite way from a lot of countries throughout Europe, in that it's kind of opening up its immigration policies and making it more simple for people to become citizens of Portugal.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that throughout today. But first, we're going to listen to the article one time. Boasting one of the most welcoming immigration systems in Europe, Portugal has undergone a significant demographic change, with its foreign immigrant population doubling in the past 5 years. This shift is particularly notable given the broader European trend towards stricter immigration control. The new immigrants swelling Portugal's population primarily originate from South and Southeast Asian countries, such as India, Nepal, and Indonesia, and they often arrive by informal means. They can seek employment in Portugal and apply for residency once they are employed, all the while bypassing typical formal requirements such as temporary visas. As legal residents, while they have to contribute to the local economy through taxes and social programs, they can also apply for their relatives to join them. Eventually, 5 years of legal residency will qualify them for Portuguese citizenship. Portugal's inclusive immigration policy is driven by necessity, striving against one of the fastest aging populations in Europe and immigration to other EU countries with higher wages. Portugal relies on immigrants to expand its workforce. This is particularly true in some labor-intensive sectors, such as agriculture, fishing, and food service. By legally incorporating these immigrants, Portugal not only addresses labor shortages, but also facilitates their inclusion in the economic and social fabric of the nation. In contrast, other European countries are tightening their immigration policies. For example, the UK has taken a tougher stance by curbing legal immigration and proposing to deport some illegal immigrants to Rwanda. Such policies aim to reduce irregular arrivals and address security concerns through more rigorous immigration control, but have sparked debates about the implications for human rights and international obligations. Portugal's example offers valuable insights into understanding the benefits of immigration while we navigate its impact. In this era of globalization, countries worldwide need to evaluate their own immigration strategies to ensure a fair solution for everyone. All right, so diving in, just looking at the title, we have that, again, Portugal's open immigration policies. So we know right away that we're looking at something different from what Mike was talking about earlier about closing the borders. Here it sounds like they are opening the borders, or welcoming more people to come in and immigrate into the country. Immigrating in, you emigrate with an E starting to go out, and we will see that later on in our article as well.
Absolutely. So let's look at the article. It says, boasting one of the most welcoming immigration systems in Europe, Portugal has undergone a significant demographic change, with its foreign immigrant population doubling in the past 5 years. Wow, that is a big demographic change for sure. And yes, as countries like Britain and Italy look to control their borders more and bring immigration numbers down, other countries like Portugal, Denmark, I believe Norway, some of the Scandinavian countries are opening up their immigration system. So it's not a one-way story or one-way traffic. A lot of countries are pursuing different policies because, of course, they have different local needs for immigrants, for new people to come in, new workers to come in often to keep their economies growing. And this will lead to demographic change. When we talk about demographic, demos meaning the people, and graphic means we're drawing things. We're learning things from statistics, basically, about people. When the government wants to ask questions about how many people live in your home, what ages are these people, what's your education level, things like that. They're learning about demographics.
They're learning demographic about survey or something like that.
Surveys, things like that. They're learning about the makeup of the people in the country, so they have better ideas on how to, adjust government policies and spend government money. So demographic change, if we're reading this in this sentence, it basically means there are a lot more foreigners living in Portugal who are not just visiting there, but have decided to move there. And this number has doubled in the past 5 years. So if they say, for example, had 1 million foreigners who'd moved to Portugal 5 years ago, now there are 2 million. And in a fairly small country like Portugal, that would be a very noticeable change. You would probably notice that as you're walking around. And it's also notable, as we said, when we look at the other trends or the ways other European countries are dealing with immigration, not by opening their borders, but by closing them.
Right, and that's what we see in this next sentence. Just to mention first, though, if you look at Spain, if you look at Europe and you look at Spain, over to the left, there's this little kind of extended rectangle country, or
on the Atlantic coast,
somewhat of the shape of Taiwan in a lot of ways, attached to Spain on the left side, and that is Portugal, with a capital. I believe the capital's Lisbon, and so if we go back into our article, this shift is particularly notable given the broader European trend towards stricter immigration control, and that's just what we've been talking about before. I know in Sweden, there's a shift slowly towards closing the borders a bit more. In Switzerland, there's regularly commentary about there being too many people coming in. And in Italy, if people come in on a boat, they're going to send them out a lot of times on a boat to another country or maybe by train to another country. And that's because these European countries are looking at being stricter about their immigration control. They're trying to be more severe. They're trying to limit the number of people coming in. And so this shift, this change in the demographic in Portugal, this is particularly notable, particularly worth noticing, given that whole trend for stricter immigration. And the new immigrants swelling Portugal's population primarily originate from South and Southeast Asian countries such as India, Nepal, and Indonesia. And they often arrive by informal means. So that's just a lot of information that's telling us that the people that are coming in, that are swelling, that are rapidly increasing Portugal's population, are mainly originating from South and Southeast Asian countries, so India, Nepal, Indonesia, and they show up by informal means. I don't quite know what that means. My guess is that they were not invited to come beforehand, or they haven't been given a specific visa to come in and work. They're allowed to just come in, find a job, and then go from there.
There you go. So they're not getting their travel visas or work visas in their native country before they travel to Portugal. They could be arriving in Europe by through any port or any airport, and then by road, train, bus, they get to Portugal. Maybe they're also going through North Africa and coming across the Mediterranean in some of those boats that are also bringing North and Central Africans to many parts of Europe. But yeah, it's interesting that a lot of them do seem to originate from Asia instead of from North Africa. But like immigrants from all over the world, what are they doing there? It says they can seek employment. They can look for jobs in Portugal. And this is an interesting feature of Portuguese law, and apply for residency once they are employed, all the while bypassing typical formal requirements such as temporary visas. So this is a strong evidence here that the Portuguese government have adjusted their laws and their rules to kind of make this informal immigration kind of legal. They're not putting up barriers. They're not chasing these people down, locking them up, sending them back home or things like that. No, if you get there to Portugal through basically any means, you can apply for residency. You can apply to live there legally. So basically be a foreigner, but with the permits to live and work in the country once you have a job. So you get there, you get a job, and then you can apply to live there. So that would allow you to obviously rent a home, but also do things like get a phone contract and sign up for power and all the other things.
Bank account, probably.
Bank accounts, yeah, all the other things that people who live in a country would require. So this is all the while, all at the same time. That's kind of what we mean. All the while bypassing typical formal requirements. So to bypass is to go around something that would normally be a barrier or an obstacle or something like that. If you're waiting in line and someone you recognize someone at the front of the line, you might go over and talk to them to bypass all of the people standing in front of you.
That's sneaky.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe you have a friend who works in a store and they kind of let you do something that other people might not be allowed to do. So they're allowing you to bypass the typical rules and regulations. So that's kind of a nice thing. This, though, of course, is a formal thing. So they've set it up this way to make it much easier for people to live there, to bypass or get around the typical formal requirements such as temporary visas. These would be the things that require time, money, and in many cases require you to apply and do all your paperwork in your home country before you get on that airplane to fly off to another country. But often, when you need a permit to travel, we would call that a visa. So there are many types of visas. Many places would have a landing visa, so you don't have to apply. As soon as you arrive, for example, if a Taiwanese person flies to Japan, they don't have to apply for any permits or visas to travel before the trip. They land there, they get a stamp in their passport. That's a landing visa, and it might allow you to stay in the country for 3 months.
Temporarily.
Or something like temporarily as a tourist. But of course, if you're going to live there, if you're going to study there, if you're going to work there, if you're going to marry a person from that country, these would be different types of visas, and many of them do require a bit of time and paperwork and money to prepare before you can travel. But in this case, in Portugal at least, they don't require a lot of visas before people arrive. Once you get there, as we learned, you can get a job, get a home, and basically be allowed to legally live and work in the country.
That's right. And as legal residents, while they have to contribute to the local economy through taxes and social programs, they can also apply for their relatives to join them. So they do have to contribute to the local economy by paying their taxes. You work, you pay your taxes in the local area where you're residing. And you also have to pay into social programs, maybe like in a retirement fund or healthcare programs. But they can also they can fill out the forms and see if they can get their relatives to be able to come over to Portugal and stay there as well. And eventually, if you are a legal resident and do a good job for 5 years, 5 years of legal residency will qualify them for Portuguese citizenship. So after a period of time, eventually, 5 years of legal residency, you're there for 5 years, legally residing, paying your taxes, paying into social programs, not committing crimes, then you can qualify, you will be allowed to receive Portuguese citizenship. And here by citizenship, it means you will become a citizen of Portugal with the rights to vote, maybe the rights to have further health care or further retirement benefits that you wouldn't receive if you weren't a citizen. So citizenship is becoming a citizen. Let's take a minute now and listen to our Chinese teacher.
Hello everyone, 我是派老师，今天讲解的是9月10号 Unit 6 Portugal's Open Immigration Policies。这个单元透过新闻时事带大家更加认识世界。这几年随着高中以下班级人数减少，各个学校招生减班，乃至于一些私立大学退场， 大家相当关注少子化对台湾社会所带来的冲击。不过，台湾并不是世界上唯一面对少子化危机的国家。远在欧洲的葡萄牙也有人口结构改变的问题。他们早在几年前就意识到劳动力不足，特别在劳力密集的产业，极度依赖宽松的移民政策，解决劳动力不足的问题。好，我们一起来看学习重点吧。请同学看到第一段第一个句子 boasting one of the most welcoming 这个句子，请同学注意这个 boasting 这个句子是分词构句，我们要从逗点后面去找出意思上的主词，也就是葡萄牙。那 boasting 请同学就记得在心中呢就把它认定成是有的意思就好了，而且有的东西是正面的，所以葡萄牙有，好，有什么呢？是移民制度。那 immigration systems 请同学注意就是移民制度， systems 不要把它翻成体系或系统哦。好，那葡萄牙的移民制度怎么样呢？在欧洲国家当中最为友善， one of the most welcoming。 那这里的 welcoming 我们可以把它视为呢是友善的意思。再来请同学特别注意的是词语搭配，就是请同学看到 Portugal has undergone a significant demographic change， 这里的 undergo a change， 好，经历什么样子的改变？动词我们用 undergo。 好，再来请同学注意 demographic 这个词，好，它其实是两个字的组成。第一个呢其实是来自于希腊文的字根，这个 demo 就表示跟人有关系的，好，所以这里就是指跟人口结构相关的。再来请同学看到第二个句子，第二个句子这里要请同学注意的是这个形容词 notable， notable 是值得注意的。再来请注意到的是后面这个 given 这个字， given 呢它是介系词，同学以后看到呢就把它想成是鉴于，后面通常会引出背景资讯或者一些已知的事实来解释或强调前面的陈述。这里整句话的意思是说，考虑到整个欧洲的趋势，移民管制趋于严格，这项变化特别值得关注。再来请同学看到第二段，第二段在这里请同学注意第一个句子最后面，这里讲到呢就是葡萄牙的一些新移民，不过他们有个特点， They often arrive by informal means。 那这里虽然是用 informal means非正式的，不过其实呢就隐含着他们其实算是怎么样呢？非法入境的。好，那再来请同学看到第二个句子，第二个句子这里逗点之后有一个 all the while， 请同学注意，这里表示是在这个期间，就是这些移民呢他们进入了葡萄牙之后可以申请居留，而同时间呢他们其实也不需要像一般正常的申请的程序。好， bypassing 这里就等于是跳过的意思。那一般而言需要怎么样啊？需要申请临时的签证，他们可以呢在葡萄牙找工作，然后呢在就业以后申请居留，不需要再循着一般正式的管道申请临时签证。好，那再来请看到第三个句子，第三个句子的这个 while 要特别小心哦，这里呢是表示虽然尽管，而不是同时的意思了。好，那这整句话的意思呢是说，作为合法居民，他们呢虽然需要透过缴税还有参与社会的一些计划，那为当地经济做出贡献，不过呢相较之下他们也可以申请让亲属来这里定居，所以这里有两个对比，前面这个是义务，就是缴税，后面呢只是他们有权可以这么做，申请亲属来这里定居。
All right, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back.
All right, we are back with our articles. Now we've learned about how Portugal is making it easier for immigrants to arrive and work legally in the country. Let's read about why they're doing this, why they have this sort of open policy for immigrants. we'll see that many of the reasons for Portugal will also be true for other countries around the world. It says Portugal's inclusive immigration policy is driven by necessity. So they're doing it because they have to. A necessity is something that is necessary, that's something that you must do or you have to have. So this inclusive policy is driven by need, in other words. If something's inclusive, that means everyone is included. We're not sort of keeping out different groups of people. We're not restricting it to certain ages or certain genders or anything like that. We're basically saying, come one, come all. It doesn't matter who you are. We welcome you. Why are they doing it? It says striving against one of the fastest aging populations in Europe and emigration to other EU countries with higher wages. Portugal relies on immigrants to expand its workforce. It's no big secret. They need workers.
Yeah.
Why do they need workers? Because they're striving, they're working hard or kind of fighting against a very quickly aging population. This sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Taiwan and Japan. A lot of older people, not a lot of babies being born. So basically, we're running out of workers as the workers of the past age out of the workforce and retire. You need people to replace them. And if, the babies in the country aren't being born, you need emigration. You need people to come in. You need immigration, I should say. You need people to come in. We should take a moment here. Migration is the movement of people around the world, whether coming or going, leaving or staying, finding a new home or exiting their old home. And then we also have immigration. Immigration is when people go into a new country. So if you leave Taiwan to move to Australia for a new job, you immigrate to Australia, you emigrate or you leave from Taiwan. So if you want to have an easy way to remember this, emigrate with an E, you're exiting, right? Starts with an E, and immigrate with an I, you're going into a new place. But all of it is migration, the movement of people. So Portugal is looking for immigration from other countries because they're facing a problem of emigration of their own Portuguese people. These Portuguese, young Portuguese, are leaving Portugal to go to France or Spain or Italy or other places in Europe where they can make more money, higher wages. So Portugal is relying on immigrants, people from Asia, for example, as we learned, to expand its workforce. The workforce are the number of available workers that you have in your society to work. Basically, healthy people between kind of the ages of 18 and 60, the kind of people to fill all those jobs that, companies need to keep going and even to expand and be healthy.
And a lot of times it's not the jobs where you're sitting at a desk and in air condition all day long that people are trying to fill. It's the labor-intensive sectors. So this is particularly true in some labor-intensive sectors, such as agriculture, fishing, and food service. Labor-intensive means you have to put a lot of work into a lot of physical work, not just, I picked up my pen and signed my name 100 times. That is not labor-intensive. But if you have to work in a field, as with agriculture, and harvest crops, bring in all of the crops, then you wear yourself out. You're out in the heat, you're out in the sun, you are pulling and carrying and doing a lot of hard work. Fishing, of course, can also require a lot of lifting because you're getting the fish in nets and then you're bringing them onto the boat and then you're sorting through them. Maybe you also have to do all the cleaning and gutting of the fish. Food service, this can be a lot of different areas. It can be working in a factory where food products are created. It can also be, serving food. So it really kind of depends which area of food service they're talking about here. By legally incorporating these immigrants, so by introducing and bringing these immigrants into the workforce, Portugal not only addresses labor shortages, but also facilitates their inclusion in the economic and social fabric of the nation. So they take care of and handle labor shortages, a lack of workers, and they also at the same time facilitate or make easier their inclusion in the economic and social fabric of the nation. So when you facilitate something, you make it easier. If you manage to study hard for your test, it will facilitate you taking the test the next day. You will do a very good job taking the test because you've made it easier by doing the hard work ahead of time. And you here are facilitating the inclusion of this workforce, these people the joining into the economic and social fabric. Fabric, if you think of fabric, you might think of cloth or material. Here, social fabric is talking about society and how it's interwoven and how people are all living together. So the social fabric is your society of the nation.
Yes, absolutely. And as we've seen in other countries, sometimes when you have great demographic change, it can lead to problems with the local population feeling, oh, all these foreigners are suddenly here, all the jobs are disappearing, rent is going up because more people are looking for homes. So this is something that can cause political and social problems in a country, but Portugal seems to be handling it quite well. In contrast, the next paragraph begins, other European countries are tightening their immigration policies. This is referring to countries like the UK, Italy, places like that, where they are not welcoming immigrants, even if they might need them, but they feel that it's too much for the social fabric of the country. It's causing problems, so they're looking to restrict immigration. For example, the UK has taken a tougher stance by curbing legal immigration and proposing to deport some illegal immigrants to Rwanda. Yeah, they're taking a much tougher stance or have much harsher rules. They're trying to curb legal immigration. To curb something is basically to stop it from happening or to reduce the amount that it is happening. All right, so if you're trying to curb an animal's bad behavior, you might have to discipline it a little more or take it to a training school or something. You're tired of your dog chewing on your slippers and peeing on your floor. You have to curb that kind of bad behavior. You might not stop it totally, but you're definitely trying to limit it or restrict it in a great way. So they're trying to reduce levels of legal immigration, and they're proposing to deport, to basically physically take out some of the people who have arrived, the people they don't want or the people they consider illegal immigrants. In the UK's case, they're planning to put them on a plane in London and then fly them to the middle of Africa and leave them in Rwanda, which is a position or a policy that even the UK courts has said is illegal. But the conservative this conservative UK government still wants to go ahead with this very harsh policy. Such policies aim to reduce irregular arrivals and address concerns through more rigorous or tough immigration control, but have sparked debates about the implications or the effects, what it all means for human rights and international obligations. It's against the law to basically do what the UK government is proposing to do, which is why the court said they can't do it, but the UK government seems to be going ahead with this. I think there'll be an election there very soon, or there has been one. And so we don't know if this policy will actually ever happen in real life, but it kind of shows you some of the measures or some of the lengths to which some of these countries will be willing to go to reduce immigration, very different from Portugal.
Right, and that's what's interesting with Portugal. So Portugal's example offers valuable insights or looks into understanding the benefits of immigration, so getting a concept of the good things about immigration. So Portugal's, focusing on the good of immigration while we navigate. So we're moving through, kind of trying to figure out what's right, what's wrong. That's when you're navigating a situation. It's kind of like a boat, a ship trying to figure out how to navigate its way on the oceans. You're going to look at a map, but we don't always have a map. In this particular situation with immigration, there might not be a map, but you still need to figure out the right way to move through the immigration topic, and that's navigating the topic. And here they're navigating its impact, the impact of immigration in Portugal. In this era of globalization, countries worldwide need to evaluate their own immigration strategies and ensure a fair solution for everyone. And that's just kind of a wrap-up of the realization that most countries in the world are dealing with immigration issues, and they need to have immigration strategies or methods to deal with people coming in and wanting to live in and work in their country. We're going to take a minute now and listen to our Chinese teacher one more time.
好，再来我们看到第3段的第一个句子，请看到这个形容词 inclusive immigration policy， 这个 inclusive 就是具有包容性的。再来，请同学呢看到第2个句子，这里老师要特别说明的是，我们可以看到在这里它其实一样都是分词构句，从 striving 开头这里，那所以是葡萄牙他们很努力的要去做一件事，什么事呢？我们了解 葡萄牙在人口结构上原本就面临了2大问题，一个就是他们在欧洲各国当中人口老化很快，另外一个呢就是受到其他欧盟成员国薪资比较高的吸引，很多葡萄牙人选择外移，所以葡萄牙劳动力不足。那这里的 striving against 我们可以看得到，那就是葡萄牙它一直想要克服这方面的问题哦。刚刚老师所提到的问题，他们的做法是什么呢？试图用比较友善的移民政策吸引外国人来移入。再来，请同学看到第3个句子逗点之前，这里有一个 labor-intensive sectors， 就是有一些产业它是属于劳力密集的。再来，请看第4个句子，老师要请大家注意的也是词语搭配，在逗点之后 Portugal not only addresses labor shortages， 好，所以就是要去解决什么问题，动词的是 addresses， 在这里就是解决哪方面的问题呢？劳动力短缺 labor shortages。 好，那再来请看到第4段的第一个句子，开头的这个片语很重要， in contrast， 那就是拿葡萄牙跟其他的欧洲国家相比，相较之下 in contrast， 其他国家在做什么事呢？ They're tightening their immigration policies， 他们呢在加强移民的管制。好，以上就是我们针对这一篇关于葡萄牙移民政策所做的中文讲解，谢谢大家。
All right, everybody. So that's all we have for today. We have learned an awful lot about Portugal, and we've also talked quite a bit about Europe and their immigration policies. For English Digest, I'm Leah.
And I'm Mike.
Bye-bye.